I lost my baby and my mill made it public. But I exposed her affair of 8 years in front of everyone at the anniversary party. My ML announced my miscarriage over dinner, and I revealed her affair at her anniversary party. I was 14 weeks pregnant when I felt something warm run down my leg at work. I went to the bathroom and noticed blood soaking through my dress. I called my husband Ryan with trembling hands and said, "Something's wrong with the baby. There's so much blood. Come get me now." He said, "I'm on my way. Don't move." I could hear him grabbing his keys and running. By the time they got me into a room and hooked up to the monitors, our baby had passed away. The doctor used terms such as spontaneous and nothing you could have done. But all I heard was that the tiny heartbeat we saw on the ultrasound 4 weeks ago had stopped, and there was no medical reason for it. Matt sat on the edge of my hospital bed, holding his face in his hands and crying. And I reached for him and said, "I'm so sorry." And he looked up and said, "Don't. This isn't your fault." And he pulled me into his chest, and we stayed there until the nurse arrived to inform us of the next steps. We agreed not to tell anyone until we were ready. "I can't handle your mother right now," I told her. Ryan nodded and said, "I know. We'll tell people when you're ready. No one needs to know yet." I trusted him because I had no reason not to. And I forgot that keeping secrets from his mother, Lena, was impossible because she had the key to our house and could use it whenever she wanted. 4 days later, I was sitting on the kitchen floor, crying into a onesie I had purchased the week before, when I heard the front door open and saw Lena standing over me, grocery bags in her hands, and her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. "Well," she said, looking around at the tissues scattered on the floor and the empty ice cream container on the counter. "This is quite a scene." I wiped my face and said, "Lena, I wasn't expecting you." And she stepped over me to set her bags on the counter and said, "Clearly, when Ryan told me you weren't feeling well, I assumed it was something minor. A cold, maybe, not a complete breakdown in the middle of the day." She turned to look at the onesie in my hands, her eyes narrowing. "Is that baby clothes? Why are you sitting on the floor crying over baby clothes, Rachel?" I didn't want to tell her anything, but she kept staring at me with that look she gives servers when her food comes out wrong. And the words came out anyway, because I was exhausted and empty, and all I wanted was for her to leave. "I lost the baby," I said, my voice cracking with the final word. 4 days ago, we weren't going to tell anyone yet. If you didn't know her well enough, Lena's face changed into something that almost looked like sympathy. She lowered herself to the floor beside me and grabbed my hands and said, "Oh, honey, that explains everything. I knew something was off with you lately, but I thought you were just being moody again." I said, "I'm not being moody. I lost my baby." And she squeezed my hands and said, I know. And I'm sure you're blaming yourself even though the doctor probably told you these things just happen sometimes, especially with first pregnancies, especially when the moth." She tilted her head as she looked at me. "You have been under a lot of stress, haven't you? Working all those hours, not taking care of yourself properly. I told Ryan months ago that you needed to slow down, but you never listened to me." I pulled my hands away and said, "The doctor said it wasn't anything I did." And Lena nodded slowly and said, "Of course he did. They always say that, but we both know you could have taken better care of yourself, eaten better, rested more. You're not exactly known for pudding, but what's done is done. No point dwelling on it now." I said, "Please don't tell anyone. I need time before the whole family knows." And she put her hand over her heart and said, "Sweetheart, I would never betray your trust like that. I swear on my marriage, this stays between us until you're ready. Though, I believe the family deserves to know eventually. They've been asking about grandchildren for years, and it's not fair to keep them in the dark simply because you're embarrassed." That Friday, she called and said she was planning a small dinner for us, because we needed to be surrounded by people we loved. She said it was just her immediate family. "You really need to get out of that house. Sitting around crying isn't going to bring the baby back." I said, "I don't think I'm ready for company." And she sighed heavily and said, "Rachel, This isn't about what you want. Ryan is struggling, and he needs his family around him right now. Or is this going to be like every other time when your needs come before his? So, I put on a dress and let Ryan drive me to his parents' house, where 35 people were waiting in the den. I grabbed his arm and whispered, "You said immediate family." He said, "I guess Mom invited more people. Just get through it." Lena floated through the crowd in a cream dress. When she saw me, she rushed over and grabbed my face, saying loudly, "Oh, you poor thing. You look exhausted. Have you been sleeping at all? You have bags under your eyes." Everyone turned to look at me. Halfway through dinner, Lena stood up and tapped her wine glass, and the room fell silent. "I need your prayers," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "My son just lost his first baby, and I'm trying to be strong for him, but my heart is absolutely shattered." 35 people were staring at me. Lena sat back down, grabbed my hand, leaned in close, and whispered, "You should really smile. People are going to think you don't appreciate them being here for you." I knew right then that tomorrow morning, I was going to sit back down and force him to choose between me and his mother. Lena assumed I would remain silent because that is what I had always done. But she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She wanted to play a grieving grandmother in front of 35 people. So I was going to make her explain why she had broken her promise in front of her son. For the first time in 6 years, I was not afraid of what would happen if I stopped being polite. I'll tell you exactly how the conversation went. For the first 10 minutes of the ride home, the car was silent. I stared out the window, waiting for Ryan to say something, to apologize, to admit that his mother had just done something terrible. Finally, he cleared his throat and said, "I know tonight wasn't what you expected." I laughed so hard because that was the biggest understatement I'd ever heard. "Wasn't what I expected. Ryan, your mother announced our miscarriage to 35 people after she promised she wouldn't tell anyone." He tightened his grip on the steering wheel and said, "She was trying to help. She thought you needed support." I turned to face him and said, "She thought I needed support, or she thought she needed an audience." He didn't respond. We pulled into our driveway, and he turned off the car and sat there, staring at the garage door. "I need you to apologize to her," he explained quietly. I was sure I'd misheard him. "Excuse me?" He turned to face me, wearing that soft expression he used when he wanted me to do something I didn't want to do. "You barely spoke to anyone all night. You didn't thank her for the dinner. You just sat there looking miserable, and now she's upset because she thinks you're mad at her." I opened and closed my mouth because I couldn't find words for what I was hearing. "I am mad at her," I finally said. "She told everyone about the baby after she promised she wouldn't. I have a right to be mad, Ryan." He sighed and rubbed his eyes. "She made a mistake. She got emotional, but giving her the silent treatment all night was cruel, and you need to apologize by tomorrow morning." I got out of the car and walked inside without saying anything. He followed me into the bedroom, saying, "Rachel, I'm serious." She called me crying on the way home. "She thinks you hate her." I put on my pajamas and said, "Good. Maybe she should think about why." He looked at me as if I was speaking a foreign language. "You're being unreasonable. All she did was ask for prayers. That's what family does." I climbed into bed, turned off my lamp, and said, "If you can't see what she did wrong, then I don't know how to explain it to you." He stood there in the dark for a long moment before walking out, and I heard the guest room door close behind him. The next morning, I awoke to 20 text messages. Ryan's aunt called to see if I was all right after Lena expressed concern about my mental health. His cousin asked if I needed anything because she heard I wasn't dealing with the loss well. His other cousin said, Lena mentioned I'd been acting erratic and asked if I wanted to talk to someone professionally. I pulled away from him. "You want me to see a therapist your mother recommended so she can control that narrative as well?" He threw his hands up. "Mom knows a really good one from church, and honestly, I'm starting to agree with her. You're acting like everyone is out to get you. That's not normal, Rachel. That's not healthy." That night, he moved into the guest room. He said he needed space to think because I was refusing to apologize and refused to get help, and he didn't know what else to do. I lay in our bed alone, staring at the ceiling and thinking about how Lena had managed to isolate me completely in less than 4 days. My husband thought I was insane. The next morning, I saw that Lena had posted a photo of herself hugging me at the table with her eyes closed and her face pressed against my hair on Facebook. Her family and co-workers thought I was insane. She had used my worst moment to destroy every relationship I had, all while crying and asking for prayers. The caption read, "Please pray for my sweet daughter-in-law during this difficult time. She's struggling, but our family will get her through it." 250 likes, 50 comments about what an amazing mother-in-law she was, and a dozen people tagging mental health resources for me to read. I screenshotted everything and sent it to my best friend Danielle with the message. "Am I crazy, or is this insane?" She immediately called me. I told Danielle about everything: the dinner, the texts, the prayer group, Ryan's move to the guest room, and she was silent for a long time before saying, "You need to leave there. This woman is attempting to destroy you, and your husband is assisting her." I said, "I can't just leave. Where might I go?" She said, "You can stay with me, but Rachel, I am serious. What she is doing is not normal. This was calculated. She's preparing you for something, and you must figure out what it is before she finishes building her case." I thanked her, hung up, and sat in my kitchen, wondering how my life had fallen apart so completely in 4 days. I'd lost my baby, my husband, and my reputation, and Lena was out there collecting sympathy and prayers while I sat alone in a house that no longer felt like mine. I agreed to help set up Lena's anniversary party, but I wasn't going to fold napkins. She thought sending me into her house alone was safe because she'd already convinced everyone I was the crazy one, but women like Lena always have secrets, and I was going to search every room until I found something that proved who she really was. When she handed me those keys, she had no idea what she was giving me. 4 days after the dinner, Lena called and said she needed help setting up for her 30th anniversary party. "Kenneth is out of town until Thursday, and I can't possibly do everything myself," she said in that sweet voice that made me want to throw my phone across the room. "Will you come and help? It would mean so much to me." I said yes because Ryan was standing right there, and I knew that refusing would give her more ammunition. She'd tell everyone I was too unstable to help with a simple party, adding it to her list of evidence that something was wrong with me. So, Saturday morning, I drove to her house and spent 4 hours carrying boxes and ironing tablecloths while she supervised from the couch and pointed out everything I was doing wrong. "The napkins need to be folded into swans, not rectangles," she said without looking up from her phone. "And those centerpieces need to be on the west side of the room. The light is better there for photos." I nodded, adjusted, rearranged, and fantasized about walking out the door and never returning. Around noon, she sent me upstairs to get some extra chairs from her bedroom closet. "They're in the back," she called after me. "Behind the boxes. Make sure you don't mess up anything while you're looking." I climbed the stairs and went into the master bedroom, opening the closet door. It was massive, a walk-in the size of my living room, with shelves, drawers, and racks of clothes organized by color. I pushed past the dresses and moved some boxes, and the chairs were folded up against the back wall. As I was pulling them out, I knocked over a shoebox on the top shelf, and it fell open, spilling receipts everywhere. I knelt down to gather them, and that's when I realized what they were for. Jewelry. Expensive jewelry. A diamond bracelet from 3 years ago, pearl earrings from last Christmas, and a necklace that cost more than the car. I'd never seen Lena wear any of these things, and I was putting the receipts back when I heard her phone buzz from the nightstand in the bedroom, which she must have left upstairs when she went to answer the door earlier. I should have ignored it, grabbed the chairs, and gone back downstairs, pretending I never saw anything. But something made me walk over and look at the screen. The notification was from someone named John with a heart emoji, and the preview showed the first line of the text. "Last night was perfect. I can't stop thinking about you." My entire body went cold. John. I recognized the name. He was a deacon at Lena's church and had been attending family dinners for years. He always sat next to her, refilled her wine glass before anyone else's, and laughed a little too hard at her jokes. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe it was a different John. Maybe the text was innocent and I was reading into it because I wanted to find something wrong with her. But my hands were already moving. I picked up her phone, typed in the passcode. I'd seen her enter 100 times at family dinners, and it opened immediately. I went to her messages, found John's thread, and began scrolling. I miss you already. You're the only person who understands me. Kenneth does not touch me in the same way that you do. I wish I'd married you instead. 8 years of messages. 8 years of I love you, I need you. You're my soulmate, and explicit descriptions of things that made my stomach turn. I kept scrolling with shaking hands and found photos of Lena in lingerie, which I'd never seen before, and John shirtless in what appeared to be a hotel room. I backed out of the messages, checked her photos, and discovered a hidden album with hundreds more, including photos from their anniversary trip to Napa, a family reunion in Lake Tahoe, and Christmas Eve 3 years ago, when she said she was tired and went to bed early. John had been buying her gifts that she couldn't wear around her husband. I went back to the closet and looked at the jewelry receipts, which were all purchased within a week of one of their anniversary trips. I found hotel rooms, restaurant receipts, and screenshots of reservations for places she'd told Kenneth she was going to with her girlfriends. I felt a shift inside me as I stood in that closet, surrounded by evidence of 8 years of lies. This woman had destroyed my reputation, turned my husband against me, announced my dead baby to 35 people, and then told everyone I was crazy when I got upset about it. And while she was preaching about faithfulness and family values while sleeping with the church deacon, I pulled out my phone and started screenshotting everything, the texts, the photos, the receipts. I worked quickly and methodically, saving every piece of evidence I could find in my own phone. Then I put her phone back exactly where I found it, grabbed the chairs, and walked downstairs, saying, "Found them. Where should I set them up?" Lena smiled at me from the couch and said, "By the windows. Thank you so much for your assistance. I know things have been difficult between us recently, but I truly appreciate you." I smiled back and said, "Of course. That's what family is for." She had no idea that I had just found everything I needed to destroy her. I spent the rest of the afternoon setting up chairs, hanging decorations, and watching Lena bark orders at the caterers while I pondered what I was going to do with the information I'd discovered. A part of me wanted to tell Kenneth right away. He deserved to know what his wife had been doing for the past 8 years. But another part of me knew that wasn't enough. Lena had publicly humiliated me, standing up in front of 35 people and announcing my miscarriage. Then spending 3 weeks convincing everyone that I was unstable. She didn't deserve a quiet conversation. She deserved to feel exactly what I had felt. Exposed, humiliated, and destroyed in front of everyone she wanted to impress. There would be a projector for the slideshow and a microphone for the toasts, and every person Lena had ever tried to impress would be in that room, watching her accept congratulations for a marriage she'd been destroying since before I even met Matt. The anniversary party was in 6 days. And 250 people were expected to attend to celebrate 35 years of faithful marriage. I drove home with my phone full of screenshots and a plan in my head. I had 8 years of proof saved to my phone, and I was finally going to show Ryan who his perfect mother truly was. Lena had no idea I found her burner while she was downstairs bragging about her faithful marriage. I waited for Matt to get home from work and sat him down at the kitchen table, saying, "I need to show you something. And I need you to actually look at it before you say anything." I applied my makeup slowly and carefully, thinking about what I was about to do. The USB drive was already in my purse. I'd spent the past 6 days organizing everything. Texts were organized by date, photos were organized chronologically, and a timeline was created to show exactly when each affair milestone occurred, and what lie Lena told Kenneth to cover it. I drove to the venue by myself. It was a ballroom at the nicest hotel in town, with crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths, and 250 guests, dressed in their Sunday best, ready to celebrate 35 years of what they thought was a faithful marriage. Lena noticed me the moment I walked in and dashed over with her arms outstretched. "Rachel, you came." She drew me into a hug and whispered in my ear, "Smile, or everyone will think you're having another episode." I smiled and said, "I wouldn't miss this for the world, Lena." Tonight is going to be unforgettable. She pulled back and looked at me with something suspicious in her eyes. But then someone called her name, and she floated away to accept more compliments on her dress, decorations, and lovely wedding. I took a seat at a table near the back and watched the room fill with people who had no idea what they were actually celebrating. Kenneth stood near the bar, looking uncomfortable in his suit. He had never liked big parties. He once told me that Lena planned these events for herself, and he simply showed up where she told him to. Ryan approached my table and sat down without looking at me. I wasn't sure you'd come, he admitted quietly. I replied, I wasn't sure either. But I decided I didn't want to miss your mother's big night. He looked at me with something hopeful in his eyes. Does that mean you're ready to apologize in order to move past all of this? I took a long sip of my champagne glass and said, I think tonight is going to change a lot of things, Ryan. Let's just see how it goes. At 7, the program began. Lena had planned every minute. First, a slideshow of photos from their 35-year relationship. Following that, family and friends make toasts. Then Lena delivered a speech about the secret to a long-lasting marriage. Then dinner and dancing, and most likely more crying, praying, and thanking God for blessing her with such a wonderful husband. I looked through the slideshow and saw 35 years of smiling photos. Lena and Kenneth. On their wedding day. Lena is holding baby Ryan. Family vacations, holidays, and anniversaries. A whole life captured in images that told the story Lena wanted everyone to believe. The toast began. Ryan's aunt discussed how Lena was the glue that held the family together. A church friend praised her commitment to her marriage and faith. The pastor described her as a shining example of Christian womanhood, to which all young women should aspire. Then John stood up. I watched him approach the microphone, a glass of champagne in his hand and a smile on his face. He was tall and handsome, with gray at his temples and the assurance that came from years of people trusting him. I've known Lena and Kenneth for almost 20 years. He told me. And I can honestly say I've never met a more devoted couple. Their marriage is an inspiration. The way they support each other, the way they put their family first, the way they've built a life based on faith and love and commitment. He raised his toast to another 30 years of doing nothing but the best. Everyone drank, and I watched Lena dab her eyes with a napkin as John took his seat next to his wife, the same wife who had no idea her husband had been sleeping with Lena for 8 of the previous 20 years. Lena stood up and approached the microphone, and I knew she was going to give a speech about the secret to a long-lasting marriage, about trust and communication and never going to bed angry. I reached into my purse, felt for the USB drive, and waited. 35 years, Lena said. Her voice trembled from practiced emotion. I married my best friend 35 years ago, and every single day since then, I've woken up grateful to be able to spend my life with him. She looked at Kenneth through tears. We faced challenges. I stood up, my chair scraped against the floor, and a few people turned to look at me. Every marriage does, but we've never stopped choosing each other. We've never stopped putting our family first. And we've never broken our vows to God and our families. Lena paused in mid-sentence, and her smile flickered as she noticed me walking toward the stage. Rachel, she called into the microphone. What are you doing? I climbed the 3 steps to the platform and approached her, saying, I wanted to add something to your speech, if that's okay. Lena's face changed several times in quick succession. Confusion, suspicion, followed by a smile that did not reach her eyes. Of course, sweetheart, what did you want to say? She stepped away from the microphone, and I took a step forward, looking out at 250 faces staring at me. Kenneth was seated at the head table. Ryan was frozen in his seat. John had already begun to stand, as if he knew something was wrong. I took the USB drive out of my purse and held it up for everyone to see. The slideshow was loaded, and all I needed was the right moment to end Lena's entire life. She had no idea the USB was already queued up behind her anniversary photos. With one signal to the tech booth, every text and photo would appear on the screen for 250 witnesses. I had complete control for the first time in our marriage. The moment has finally arrived. Before I could approach the projector, Lena's hand closed around my wrist. Her grip was tight, her nails dug into my skin, and her smile never changed. Rachel, honey, let's go get some air. She spoke through her teeth. You look like you're not feeling well. I drew my arm away and said, I feel fine. Actually, better than I've felt in weeks. She leaned in and whispered, if you do anything stupid right now, I will destroy you. I'll tell everyone you're having a breakdown. I'll have you committed, and I'll make sure Chris never speaks to you again. I whispered back, you've already done all of that. What else do you have? Her smile cracked for a brief moment. She then collected herself and spoke loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. Of course, you can say a few words. We're all family here. She stepped back and gestured toward the microphone, and I could see in her eyes that she was calculating, trying to figure out what I could possibly do that she couldn't deny, what evidence I could have that she couldn't explain away. But before I could approach the tech booth, Lena grabbed my elbow and steered me down the hallway with an iron grip disguised as a loving gesture. We need to talk first, she hissed silently. She pushed me into a coat closet before closing the door behind us. And in the darkness, I finally saw her true face. No smile, no warmth, only cold calculation. I know you found something, she replied. Chris told me you looked through my phone. You've spent 3 weeks acting like a crazy person who can't handle losing a baby, and whatever you think you've got won't work. I've spent 35 years building relationships in this community and being the woman everyone trusts. I didn't lose a baby, I replied quietly. My baby died. There's a difference. Lena waved her hand dismissively. Same thing. The point is, no one is going to believe you over me. You could have video evidence, but they'd still think you faked it because I've already told them how unstable you've been, how paranoid, and obsessed with destroying me. She stepped closer, and I could smell her perfume mixed with champagne. So, here's what's going to happen. You're going to go back out there and smile and clap during my speech and act like a supportive daughter-in-law. And then you're going to go home and pack your things and file for divorce and disappear from my son's life forever. If you do that quietly, I won't tell anyone what really happened with your miscarriage. My veins began to bleed. What do you mean, what really happened? She smiled with the cruelest expression I'd ever seen on a human face. I mean that stress causes miscarriage. Everyone knows that. And you were so stressed, weren't you? Working all those hours, fighting with Ryan about having children when he wasn't ready. Pushing and pushing until your body gave out. We can find 44 point. She tilted her head. That's the story I'll tell if you make me. That you wanted a baby so badly you ignored the warning signs, that you kept working instead of resting, that you caused your own loss, because you were too selfish to slow down. I stared at her in the darkness of that coat closet and realized I was looking at someone who had no boundaries. Someone who will say anything and destroy anyone to protect themselves. Someone had already decided I was expendable the moment I became inconvenient. You know what the worst part is? I asked quietly. I actually thought you might love Ryan. I thought everything you did was a misguided maternal instinct. But you don't love anyone, Kenneth or Ryan. Not even John. You simply enjoy being worshipped. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise. Perhaps. Or recognition. You have no idea what you're talking about, she said, her voice losing some of its confidence. I found the jewelry, I said. The diamond bracelet. The pearls. The necklace. And all of John's gifts that you are not allowed to wear around him. You keep them hidden in your closet like trophies, as proof that someone wants you. Her face paled in the dim lighting. That's what this has always been about, isn't it? Not love, not family, just making sure everyone sees you as perfect, desirable, and the center of everything. Lena's hand reached out to grab my throat, not hard enough to choke me, but enough to convey her point. You don't know anything about my life, she said angrily. You don't know what it's like to give everything to a family that takes you for granted, to smile, perform, and sacrifice for 35 years and still feel invisible. I drew her hand away and said, You're correct. I'm not sure what that's like because I would never do what you did to feel seen. I pushed past her, opened the closet door, and returned to the ballroom. She followed closely behind me, wearing that smile like armor. "Rachel, wait," she said sweetly. "You forgot your purse." I ignored her and proceeded directly to the tech booth. I handed the USB to the projector operator. "Add this to the slideshow," I said. "Play it when I give you the signal." He looked puzzled, but plugged it in, and I returned to the microphone. Lena was standing near the stage, staring at me with narrowed eyes. She still had no idea what I had. She was still confident she could spin whatever came next. She had no idea that everything she had created was about to crumble. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," I told them. Despite my pounding heart, my voice remained steady. "Lena has been talking about this party for months. 35 years of marriage, 35 years of faithfulness, 35 years of putting her family first." I paused to look at Lena. She was looking at me with that frozen smile on her face. "But before we continue celebrating, I think everyone deserves to know the truth about what those 35 years really looked like." I gave a wink at the tech table. The screen behind me flickered, switching from the wedding photo slideshow to something else entirely. The first image represented a text message. "Last night was perfect. I can't stop thinking about you." The second was a photo of Lena and John in a hotel room with a 5-year-old timestamp. The third text read, "I wish I'd married you instead of Kenneth." The room fell silent. I observed 250 faces processing what they were seeing. I saw John's wife stand up, hand over her mouth. I watched Kenneth's face lose all color as he read the messages scrolling across the screen. I watched Lena's smile fade completely. "These messages span 8 years," I said into the microphone. 8 years of lying, 8 years of cheating, and 8 years of Lena preaching about faithful marriage while sleeping with a church deacon. This is all a lie. She made it up. She's been trying to destroy me since the day she met my son. Ask Chris. Ask him what she's really like." She pointed at Chris, who remained frozen at his table. Tell them she's crazy. Tell them she's been having a breakdown." Chris stood up slowly, and every eye in the room turned to him. He looked at his mother. He looked at the screen, which showed a photo of her and John in bed together. He looked at me as I stood at the microphone, holding the USB drive in my hand. "Is it true?" he questioned his mother. His voice was low, but everyone in the silent room could hear it. "Have you been cheating on Dad for 8 years?" Lena's eyes welled up with tears. "Chris, baby, you have to understand. Your father hasn't touched me in years. John and I have a connection. It's not what it looks like. I still love your father. I just needed someone who appreciated me." "And is it true?" Chris went on. "Yes or no?" Lena sobbed. "Yes, but it's not my fault. You don't understand what my marriage has been like. Your father is cold and distant, and John actually sees me." Chris turned and walked out of the room before she could finish. Lena screamed his name and began running after him. However, her heel caught on the stage's edge, causing her to stumble. She grabbed the anniversary cake display to steady herself, but it wasn't sturdy enough to support her weight. The whole thing tipped forward, and she landed face first in 3 layers of white frosting and fondant. For a moment, no one moved. Lena lay in the wreckage of her own anniversary cake, sobbing and covered in frosting, as 250 guests watched in stunned silence. Then, someone in the back began laughing. It spread like wildfire throughout the room, leaving half of the guests laughing and the other half filming with their phones. Lena pushed herself up to her knees. Frosting was dripping from her hair, and her designer dress was ruined, with mascara running down her cheeks like black rivers. She looked around the room at everyone who had spent years telling her how perfect she was and saw nothing but disgust, pity, and barely suppressed laughter. "Stop filming!" she exclaimed. "Stop it right now. This is a private family matter. You have no right. You lost the right to privacy when you made my miscarriage public." That's what I said. "Now everyone can see who you truly are." I stepped down from the stage and headed for the exit. John's wife grabbed my arm as I passed, saying, "Thank you. I've suspected for years, but I've never seen proof." I nodded and continued walking. Lena was screaming my name now. "Rachel, Rachel, get back here. You cannot just leave. You've ruined everything. You destroyed my family. Rachel." I was almost to the door when Chris stepped in front of me. His face was pale, his eyes were red, and he appeared to have just been told that everything he thought he knew was false. "How could you do this?" he inquired. "How could you humiliate her like that in front of everyone?" I asked, feeling something cold settle in my chest. She announced my miscarriage to 35 people after promising to keep it a secret, telling everyone I was insane, and threatening to tell them I caused my own miscarriage. "And you chose her. Every time you chose her." He shook his head. "She's my mother. And I'm your wife. I was your wife, and you never once chose me." I reached into my purse and pulled out the burner phone I'd taken from Lena's closet the day I discovered the messages. I pressed it into his hand. "This is everything. Every message, every photo, every lie she told your father for 8 years. I was going to show you privately. I was going to give you the chance to handle it as a family, but you told me I faked the screenshots. You told me I was crazy. You moved out and stayed with her and let her threaten me." I stepped around him toward the door. So I handled it the only way she left me. Lena was still calling out my name behind me. I could hear her sobbing, choking on frosting, and begging for help. I did not look back. I walked out of the ballroom, into the cool night air, and continued walking until I reached my car. My hands shook as I unlocked the door and sat in the driver's seat. I sat there for a while, staring at nothing. I just ruined my mother-in-law's marriage and reputation in front of 250 people. I'd recently ended my own marriage in the most public way possible. I had just burned down every bridge I had with the family I had married into 6 years before. I didn't feel guilty. I did not feel bad. I felt liberated for the first time since that dinner when Lena told 35 people about my miscarriage. I felt as though I could finally breathe. My phone vibrated. A text from Danielle. "I just saw on Facebook that something happened at the anniversary party. Are you okay? What did you do?" I responded, "I'll tell you everything. Can I stay at your place tonight?" She asked, "Already setting up the guest room. Get here safe." I started the car, pulled out of the parking lot, and drove to Danielle's apartment without looking back at the hotel, where my mother-in-law was still covered in cake and crying about how I had ruined her life. She'd ruined mine first. I've just